Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. I'm your host, Spencer, and today in episode 37, we got some Outlast 2, and joining us is Parker.
Hey! Again,
really enjoyed Outlast 1, as I did. Just kidding, we didn't. So listen, we played Outlast Trinity. It had Outlast and Outlast Whistleblower. Whistleblower is kind of the expansion. We talked about that last time. Mm-hmm. Now we have Outlast 2, which is a very similar game.
Yeah. But
in my opinion, a much more polished and
I can agree with that.
Not bad game.
The writing in it is definitely better.
It is the less popular one. Like, I've talked to so many people.
Not make any sense.
I've talked to so many people who pick up, like, every time they pick up the Trinity or Trilogy, whatever, I'm like, you play 2 yet? It's like, no, just 1. And it's like, okay, like, just for some reason, like, the game that is by all accounts, and you'll hear us explain why better, like, is like just less popular.
Absolutely.
The score on Steam is less high. The score on Metacritic is less high. I don't understand it. Like,
that's
I told you last
baffling.
time, the score on Outlast on Steam is like a 9 or something like that. And
that's
it's like
crazy.
It's good for Outlast 2, but it's not great. It's like a 7, 8, whatever. So again, before we go into it, our hypothesis for why, and please comment below if you've seen the same thing or have done the same thing.
Right. Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Our hypothesis for why people like Outlast is it's one of those things where they played like a half hour and were like, "Ooh, this is really scary," and just put it down.
If you only play the first, I mean, I'll say that even you have to also, because if you're the kind of person who's only going to play the first half hour, we got phone calls.
Sorry, that's when Parker made that for me, by the way. Did you guys like that? It goes, somebody. And the worst part, it was a number that I didn't recognize.
Oh, of course.
So now I'm going to get a weird, oh, I get a lot of calls for, like, and this has been happening for years. I get a lot of calls of people looking for, like, boat items. Like, not a lot, not like every
I wonder
day,
if your number's like one off of the place down the
maybe
street.
like once a month, like it'll be like Mennonite sound, and people be like, "Yeah, I'm calling about the boat," and it's like, dude, it must be like
I need a boat. I need an outdoor motor.
Maybe I should call like all the numbers that are one off from mine and just be like, I remember the one time I was even like, I told the guy the number and he's like, "Yeah, that's the number I have for the boat thing," and I was like, "Dude, come on." Anyway, so yeah, it's like we couldn't think of many other examples, but it's like you.
Well, so here's the other thing: if you're the kind of person who only plays a half hour and then puts the game down and never picks it up, you're probably also not going to read anything.
True,
and that would also save you, because like the two biggest problems with Outlast 1 are the ending is garbage, and the other one, which I think is more significant because it happens within the first 10 minutes of the game, is the writing is just dreadful. Like, the whole game mainly is told through these notes that you write after you take a picture of or whatever, or focus on something. And if you're not if you're not really doing the whole trying to get all the notes and all that stuff, then like absolutely you would be like, well, this game's pretty good, because like it's atmospherically pretty cool and creepy and horror-y, but that's it. Like, you have to only play the first half hour and you have to not read a thing, because if you read something, then I think people would have been like, oh, what? Like, unless you're like a high schooler and this is like your first like M-rated game or something, like I could see you being like, I could see that kid being like, oh, this is so funny, this is so edgy. But like, unless you're like an edgelord or something, like you would be like, this sucks.
So because Outlast 2 is a similar game to Outlast 1, like in how it's set up, we're not going to dive too much into that stuff, but we'll try to explain a lot of the differences for why we liked or didn't like this compared to the first one. So we base everything on 6 different categories. We got story, gameplay, graphics, sound, fun factor, and replayability. We take all our scores, divide it by 6. It's based out of 10, divide it by 6, and boom, you got a score. Outlast 1, I gave a 4.42, and Parker gave a 3.5. I probably should have gone more.
When you said we take all our scores, for some reason I thought you were going to make, we take all our scores very seriously.
I mean, I have a very specific setup, where I'm like,
we're very, very serious.
I can't help it. So, let's go into the story on Outlast 2. Outlast 1's story becomes it starts simple, becomes a mess at the end.
Yeah.
This one in general stays a lot more like simple
definitely.
on the path.
Yes, they definitely were like, I don't know if they... I mean, here's the thing. It doesn't seem like they got a lot of bad press. So, like, I don't know that they were like, oh, we got to fix that in this one. Because they weren't getting bad press. So, I'm actually impressed that they, like, did anything better.
Yes,
because, I could see them just doing the same thing.
I will say, and this will go along with every category, I was very surprised when I started it up. And it was, like, much more... Oh, it was. They didn't just copy and paste Outlast 1, which they could have.
Yeah.
They could have easily. I was expecting just whatever.
Yeah. Why mess with the formula if you're getting a great result?
It was much more like care put into everything.
Yes.
Graphics and all that stuff. So, starting off with the story.
Right. Okay, so we have this guy and this woman. They're journalists. Lynn, I think her name is. His name is Blake. That's right. Blake and Lynn. Are flying into... They're in a helicopter. They're flying into this place. They heard about...
It is Arizona. It's the backwoods, quote unquote, of Arizona.
Right. So it's like very isolated out like in the hills. Desolate, deserty place. But yeah, so you're flying out there because there was a report. I don't know how this report came through. I guess did they find a body or something?
Yeah, they found a body of
a Jane Doe, right? So an unidentified woman who suffered all sorts of trauma and was like either pregnant or like she was just like mutilated beyond belief or whatever. I don't remember if she was pregnant, but like obviously as we're going through the story, you find out that's the reason why she was mutilated, but I don't know if like that was a thing or not. But so you find out about this Jane Doe, and you're like, okay, we are this team, we're investigators, we're going to go and find out what happened. So you go in, very similar to Outlast 1 in that regard. So you're going into this place, and of course the helicopter has some sort of weird failure, crashes. You wake up and you find your wife Lynn is missing. And you also find that the pilot is like killed and flayed and all this stuff.
It wasn't killed from like the crash. It
right.
was, like,
you find him like flayed,
specifically pulled out,
like a ritualistic killing, where his skin was all stretched out.
Already 1 second into the game, it's better than the first one. In that, like in the first one, you're a reporter who goes by himself, and you're just there by yourself. At least this one, you have your wife,
right,
and you also have
this
what
helicopter
seems to
pilot,
be a trained helicopter pilot.
right?
Like he seems to be.
So the plan is like to land nearby and like find somebody and like interview them, but like you have 3 people there, right? And you have a helicopter, you have a means of transportation, so like seemingly like you're fairly well thought out. You're not just like driving up in your Jeep like, okay, let's check this out.
So it's already good, and it misses the horror tropes that I hate from the first one, where you're just like, why are you doing this?
Right. But yeah, so you start in at so you're exploring this weird village. You come upon soon, as you start exploring, and it immediately devolves into like what you would expect, just like a crazy backwoods village where everybody's creepy and scary. You start to realize that there's like this leader of a cult of some kind. His name's Noth. They call him Papa Noth or whatever, Sullivan, and he is like basically like. You immediately start finding these documents where he's like written his own Bible, and it'll be like Noth chapter 8 verse 2 kind of stuff, and it's like just really horrible right off the bat. Like the first thing you find is like just this weird creepiness about like women like body parts being the gateway to hell, and this it's just like what is happening? Like it's really very. But again, much different than Outlast 1 in that it was like well written. Yeah. Like it was creepy and scary, but it wasn't like eye rolling like where you were just like, okay, we get it. It was like well written, and like there was definitely like they thought it through and were like, okay, we had to have all these things connect. So there's all sorts of craziness. There's like you find these like pages that have all these weird commandments and stuff. but then you're going through, and all of a sudden you encounter this Marta figure, and she's like this really tall woman, all in black, and she has this like pickaxe with like a lantern on it, and she's like terrifying, and she's like always mumbling weird like prayers and like like things to her Messiah, who is this Noth guy or whatever. Like she's like definitely his like one of his right hand people to like execute or whatever, and so like she's super creepy, and so you're running away from her, and then you make your way to like another. It was hard to tell sometimes if like it was separate groups or if it was like the same group, different factions, because sometimes it seemed like they were battling each other. But then there's like you come upon this other group of people that's like run by this guy that's like this big. It's kind of like a Master Blaster if you ever watched Mad Max, but it's like basically a big giant hulking dude with like a little person like on his back. That's like the brains, and so you're running away from that thing and shooting fire arrows at you and stuff.
And very creepy. That person or persons or whatever is part of the
heretics.
Yeah, they're the group that have like been like cast
separate.
Out.
Right? Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Like cast
so
out.
was that? Yeah. So it was like a warring faction.
Yeah.
Where they're like always going up against each other because a group of people were like, Noth is not the end all. Like he doesn't know everything, and they like went off. And did their own thing.
And when you eventually find a lot of them, they're like camps of like literal like lepers. And stuff
right.
Like
they have like a weird
disease. The problems, the diseases.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's this, and that could be why they were cast out. It's a lot of it's like they don't, which is a good thing. They don't over-explain. They don't be like, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
They leave it up to your imagination, which is like makes it a million times scarier, and is always better to do that.
And even more so, I don't know if these are the people you were talking about before. You meet the actual. They seem at first normal people. With that short-haired woman, I forget her name. She is like the definite head of the like the opposite group.
Right, exactly.
Whereas the ones I was talking about were more like literally just like the cast-offs. Like it's clear because like Noth clearly just takes whoever's like weak or like sick or whatever,
and sends them off.
Them off. Right.
Right. So there's like kind of three different groups or whatever.
Right.
So there's like the sick lepers that just no one wants. And then there's the actual like warring faction, which is headed up by this woman who's like very very beautiful, like but just in her face. Like her face looks like a model, but then the rest of her is like weirdly corrupted and like in a like just very upsetting. But so you're making your way through. You reunite with Lynn at one point. And you're kind of trying to escape together. She keeps, like, they talk about the reason she was captured was because she was pregnant with the Antichrist. And so Noth is like, we're gonna kill that baby, kill the mom, whatever. So they're getting her, and then the heretics steal her. So, like, you lose track of Lynn, and she's gone again. And then some hours later, you meet back up with her, and suddenly she's, like, very pregnant.
Yeah.
When, like, previously she was not pregnant at all in the helicopter, and like when you don't see her for a while, and then when you see her again, she's like having weird stomach cramps, and all these things are talking about how she's pregnant, and then at the end she's like actually pregnant, so it's like what? So like you're going back and forth between all these factions, and you finally like escape with her, and you get like whatever. So now it would be a good time. So threaded through this story,
there is a story.
There's a second story that's threaded through all of this, and that is that when you were kids, you and your wife Lynn, now wife, were friends, mutual friends with this third person, Jessica. You all went to Catholic school together, and it becomes clear you have these flashbacks where you just like suddenly appear in like a elementary school classroom or whatever, and you like start exploring and stuff, and things are, of course, because it's a dream world, weird stuff happens, like a hallway becomes super long, or like things are flapping open and stuff's appearing. And it starts out in the beginning that like most of the hallucinations are pretty tame in terms of like you can't actually get hurt, and then as time goes on, there's like a figure that's like chases you that like can kill you, and so it becomes a thing, whatever. So what you discover over the course of these flashbacks is that Jessica and you were friends, and Lynn, all three of you were friends, and you and Jessica are like hanging out after school one day, and you're walking out of the school or whatever, but you were like kind of hiding, like messing around, like in the class, like later after hours, and one of the priests, the teachers, stops you and is like, "What are you doing here after hours?" And like you're just like, "Well, we were just leaving, whatever." And like the guy's like really kind of creepy and starts to be like, "Well, you're gonna need to stay after class, Jessica." And she's like, she's like whispering to you like, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." And you're like, and he's like being really, flexing his authority and being like, "If you don't leave right now, I'm gonna call both your parents," and blah blah blah. And so you like go to leave, and Jessica's like staying behind with this priest, and like as you're leaving, you hear Jessica scream, and you see her run by like down a hallway. So you of course go to like see what's going on. So you run through, and as you get to the stairwell, you open the door, and she is at the bottom of the stairs with her neck broken, like very clearly, and the priest is standing at the top of the stairs, and he's like, "You did not see what you think you saw." Like he's like really kind of scary. And then you realize that the thing that's been chasing you is like sort of this priest, like, but obviously much scarier. Like he's like all mutilated and weird, and it's got tentacles coming out of him. But it's like I guess your like imagination like running wild for this evil priest. And then what the priest did was to cover up the murder or the like this death that he was responsible for, he faked her own suicide. So he like got her, tied a noose, put her up like in the attic of the school or whatever, and like then she's discovered there, like, oh, how sad, she killed herself. And so you discover that, and that this kind of threads back and forth through the story, and so the two stories kind of culminate at the same time, where you like finally discover what happened in this past at the same time as you like reunite with your wife, who's like now pregnant. And it's very clear that Blake, has been like suffering from immense guilt like for your whole life, because in the flashbacks early on you're like, Jessica, and you're like, and like there's all this stuff where you refer to Jessica, and so it's something that weighs heavily on you, because even though you obviously aren't responsible for her death, you definitely like went to leave her alone with the priest and this and that, so you definitely blame yourself in some capacity and carry this with you. And it's probably very ambiguous about whether Lynn knows about it even. Like, Lynn obviously knows Jessica died, your mutual friend, and probably even knows that, like, I'm not sure whether she knows that, like, she didn't kill herself, or if you've told her that.
Yeah,
they don't really go into that, which I think is good. So you don't really know the extent at which Blake is dealing with this alone. He could be, like, really holding the whole brunt of the whole, like, situation. Or, maybe he told Jessica or Lynn, and, maybe that's why you guys are investigative journalists, because you do stuff like this. It's hard to say. But, so you reunite with Lynn. So another thing you keep finding is you find a couple of references to Murkoff, which is the same corporation that did the stuff in Outlast 1.
Right.
And you start to find out that there's like a radio tower that's basically transmitting microwave signals to somewhat mind control-y, but like it's a lot more vague than the first one, which is again good, because then it's not like, oh, this is exactly what's happening. So it's clear that maybe what's happening is that like the people in this village have been like bombarded with like some sort of microwave, to the extent that it amplifies any kind of weird like mental thing that somebody would have, to like basically you just lose your mind. So like this town is basically a product of like this being washed in this like weird like not radiation, but like this microwave signal, where it's like just messing with your head to the point where like it's breeded this like world of like craziness where there's this guy who's the the savior of this cult, and then there's this woman that's leading up the heretics, and she's like whatever, and they're all very sure about the way the world works. And over the course of you being there, you obviously are succumbing to the same problems that they're succumbing to. Like, maybe you're losing your mind because obviously this flashbacks keep happening.
Yeah, you'll generally
greater intensity.
You'll generally go through the game, and then you'll see these like big speakers, and they'll just blow this.
Right, and light gets really bright, and then all of a sudden, like, you like pass out.
Generally when they start the flashback episodes.
Right,
so
right.
They do a really good job of setting that up.
And also like, but again, like in a good way, they don't over explain anything. So you're like, is there a bright light? Are you just imagining a bright light? And like, what's exactly happening? It's hard to tell, which is good because it makes it like who's losing their mind, who's not. Over the course of trying to get Lynn, also these like kind of like sort of like signs of the apocalypse keep happening, like plagues of locusts, like raining blood, things like that will be happening as you're like walking around, and it's like makes it extra terrifying. And again, you're like, is it happening? Is it not happening? Like, who knows? But it culminates in you finding Lynn, and she's pregnant, and very pregnant, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna give birth. And so you like basically get to the temple that you were in earlier, and you get Lynn, on this altar to like give birth, and she's like, oh my god, I'm gonna give birth, and of course she dies in the giving of birth. And you but like the last thing she says before, like, so you help her give birth, and there's this baby and it's crying, and then like the last 3 words she says to you or something is like, there's nothing there, which like you don't know if she's talking about the baby or if she's talking about like what. Like, you don't know what she's referring to.
Because it could be there's physically not a baby there and she's died, or that, like, because they kept saying the baby's the Antichrist over and again. So maybe maybe she's saying that there.
Like, maybe, who knows, but, like, obviously you're both, like, out of it. But then, you kind of, you're holding this baby and you kind of pass out from the stress of everything. And when you come to, the Noth guy is standing there, and you're like, oh, great, he's going to kill this baby in front of me. And I'm like, this is going to be terrible. But he, like, basically is like, over the course, like, when you found your wife and you were running, basically what was happening was there was, like, an insane lightning storm that was just destroying everything. And so, and at one point you're about to get killed by Marta, and like as she's about to kill you, like a lightning strike hits the temple and knocks the like giant cross off, and it comes like spinning down and like impales her, like very Deus Ex Machina or whatever. But like so like there's this crazy natural disaster storm happening. So like that's when you go and hide inside the temple or whatever, the church.
And the Papa Noth, a lot like Jonestown, real life Jonestown, realizes everything. I guess
going to hell
because his thing is like, well, that baby's born, it's done, life is over. So
so before he needed, in his mind, he needed to kill the baby before it was born. Once it was born, he has no power in his whatever mind. So he had everybody like basically poison themselves,
pretty much.
And so everybody's dead. Either through the...
so, like, literally everyone on Noth's side, everyone on the Heretic side, because the Heretics are, like, you see them fighting the Noth side, and they're all being killed, so, like, literally everyone is dead but you. Like,
and there was this lightning storm, so everybody else died from that, and then Noth is sitting there, and he's, like, talking to you, and then he's, like, basically, like, you definitely should kill that child, it's gonna bring about the end of the world, and then Noth kills himself in front of you, and you're like, jeez. So then you basically get up and you're like walking out, and you're like going.
There's just bodies everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's clear that
it's like, but it's like bright and sunny day. It's like a nice new day, and you're holding this baby that may or may not be there, and then it kind of fades to you see a flashback to Jessica, and she's alive. and she has like this like mark on her neck, like from the rope that would have been around her neck, and she's like, "Come with me," and you like grab her hand and you run off, and you go to the like little back room that you were hiding in earlier, and you like start praying together, and then it just ends. Then the game just ends there, leaving you like, did he lose his mind? Like, was he dead? Like towards the end, did he die? Like, is there a baby? Like, is he just still imagining? Like, who knows? And again, in a good fashion, like a lot of good horror stories, not over-explained, and so it just ends there, and so you don't know exactly what all happens when all's said and done. But
yeah, so in general, I like this story. There are a couple things that rub me the wrong way. I really didn't get the baby thing. Like, I didn't get it. Like, I don't know why.
So
I understand that, like, his thing is against women and again
right.
the Antichrist, but like, I didn't understand how she like
got pregnant. So my thing is, if you remember, one of the things in Outlast 1 that some of the extra stuff that the files you found or whatever talked about, because there was I remember thinking it at the time, was that you were in this asylum, right? And even though there was a men's and women's wing, there was like no women. And there were some documents that talked about how the women were moved off-site because one of the things that the MK Ultra program would happen for the women was that they would get psychosomatically pregnant.
Right.
And they would not be pregnant, but they would get some weird pregnancy things. And so I'm like, maybe it's something like that where because of everything that was going on and the microwave signals and everything else, that this Lynn got fake pregnant, psychosomatically pregnant, and I assume that because when you get pregnant like that there's probably like all bets are off with like how your body would work. It could just be that you start pooling blood, or maybe like you get a growth inside of you, but it might just happen in hours or days. There's no necessarily, like, it's not necessary that it's like, oh, it's got to be 9 months, because it's not a baby. It's like a weird psychosomatic thing. So it could just be a bunch of fluid she gathered up in her stomach or in her whatever, in her uterus.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense at that point.
Which is why I'm like, for me, my assumption is if I'm like, actually, if somebody's like nailing me down on what I think happened, in my mind there is no baby, but everybody's losing their mind in this place because they're being flooded with like whatever radiation or mind control or microwaves or whatever, and so like things are happening. Like, she thinks she gets pregnant, her body makes it look like she's pregnant, she like gives birth to probably nothing, like fluid or blood, probably blood, which is why she's dead, because like, her body was doing a weird thing and then all the blood was gone, and so he probably doesn't have anything in his hands or arms, or maybe he has a weird growth, who knows, but like, he probably sees it as a baby because he's also losing his mind, because clearly Blake is like unhinged, because like he like basically feels responsible for his like best friend from a childhood's death, and like because he's Catholic, like Catholics are also like already right off the bat highly susceptible to like guilt to an extreme level. So if you feel like you're responsible for your best friend's death or whatever, like, and like just the implications of it, like that he's been carrying this with him for all this time, that like it totally makes sense that he would like completely snap and see anything. And so, judged by the fact that you have literal flashbacks that you can die in, my guess is that like it's hard to even say what's real when he's not having a flashback. Like, anything you see on screen can be somewhat affected into this hallucination kind of thing, or mental break, or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, that makes a little more sense then, but
But yeah, it is weird for sure. Like, you know,
and that's what they were going for, clearly.
Right.
Definitely better story than 1. There's no question.
Oh,
because 1 answers questions you don't want.
Right.
Where I would rather have it being left answering questions than having, you know, the opposite. So
right. And maybe that was something that got through to them. Like, maybe people were like, "Oh, it was so good, but the ending was really lame." But like, people still liked it enough that they gave it a high rating, even though the ending, in my mind, ruins that game by far. But yeah, like, if they would have, like we talked about in the first one, if they would have just kind of ended it like 3/4 of the way through that game, it would have been, I mean, the writing was still awful, but I would have liked it a lot better, because it would have just been like, this is just crazy. Like, this is what happens when you know, try to mess with people and try to, you know, play God and do all this craziness.
Clearly, if they make a 3rd one, it's got to involve in some way, even if the main protagonist gets, like, crazy killed in the process, of finding, like, the group behind
this
like,
Murkoff or whatever.
It's got to have something to do with it.
Right.
They set it up enough where it's like, okay, you see all this crazy stuff this group did. So now you got to, like, I don't care if at the end they take them down, or if they're like, BT Dubs, now we have the world. That's fine, but they got to find him, and it's got to, like, open up or something. Like that, so.
Absolutely. And I would love it if they went the route of something like Doom, where it's like there's this Murkoff corporation that, like, is like, we're doing stuff for the greater good, but then, like, it devolves into, like, insanity, you know, like, where it's like, oh, we were trying to do something good, and then it ended up being awful, you know, and killing everybody, and, like, being scary, and this and that. So something like, but yeah, they definitely, like, I feel like they definitely have mined the, like, I mean, I guess I could also see them just doing another creepy place.
I'd rather not, though. Since they've opened it up like this, I'd rather not, because Outlast 2 is such a bigger game.
Right.
That it would be like, what scale do they have to then set it up to not be like, hey, here's the big guys.
There's 16 factions this time, and they're all creepy. It's like, okay.
So yeah, in terms of just the story itself, it was simple enough that I enjoyed it, and it kept me through. I really like the flashbacks, even though near the end it became pretty obvious what happened, it was still pretty cool.
Right.
It was still pretty cool.
That was a good idea. But that was the thing, though. It did take a while to figure out what happened with the flashbacks. And I don't want to say
which I think was good.
Which I think was really good, because, like, you definitely were like, dude, what is up with these flashbacks? And then, like, it wasn't until, like you said, till towards the very end that you really start to put things together, which, like, I think is good, because then it's like, if you figured that out early, you would have just been like, okay. So, yeah, I like that a lot.
So, yeah, I'm looking, again, a 5 is completely average. I'm looking at, like, a 7 overall. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would give the story in this, like, an 8, because I did like the story a lot, and it was good. I really thought the writing was really good, with a lot of, like, the people in the towns, like, writings. You would find, like, letters to each other and stuff, and there was a lot of crazy stuff happening that, like, they put in as, like, kind of extra. Didn't really need it, but it was well written, so I appreciated that. Yeah, but I mean, I guess the next thing would be in gameplay, but yeah, I like that. I'll say another thing about that when we get to it, but yeah.
So yeah, no, in general, and I agree about those stories that you find that they read, like, a lot of them are showing, like, dissenting opinions, and like, I guess the people who were less affected by the blast were, like, trying to get out, even if they were already kind of crazy. Maybe they were just crazy on a different level. So yeah, moving on to gameplay. Now, Outlast 2 is a hard game.
Yes.
I probably died, like, 200 times in this game.
Yeah.
Like, so, now granted, luckily they give you a lot of, like, checkpoints all the time and all that, but man, it's a tough game. It's very unforgiving. Once you're seen, so, like, in Outlast 1, for the most part, it's one person walking around, and it's like, if you get past them, it's over. This one, there's, like, whole villages where, like,
so there's, like, 5 or 6 different people chasing you, or just walking around to be seen by. So yeah, it makes it a lot more difficult.
That leads it to, it's much more like you got to be able to, like, get around, like, the villages and make sure you're not seen by all these different people, and just in general the way that's set up, it's so much more open in terms of gameplay. And there were so many cool times where, like, obviously no one would play this game the same way twice, where, like, I would like know where the end is, and I would be being chased by like 8 people, and just be like, and just like
absolutely.
jump to this part, and like when you get to there, it's like done, and that was just
it was definitely like very unforgiving to the point where, like in my mind, and this is kind of where I was saying is that like I ended up not finding as everything. Like I normally try to collect everything, and I ended up nodding this one because it's so unforgiving. Like I didn't really want to go back and like research an area or whatever, like to find the note I missed or whatever, because it was like very unforgiving.
The way it's set up is like you really don't want to search any area. You just want to go to the next area.
It's just like, what do I got to do to get?
Until you find an obvious safe point. But the thing is, some safe points that you think are obvious are like not really. You might be like, I'm gonna find this, but the thing is that the people will like go into their house and whatever.
It was very like, which is, I mean, they're going for that stress, whatever, but it definitely made me not want to like find out the whole story because it was that stressful. You know what I mean? It was so stressful that I was like, I don't want to keep playing this. Like, I don't want to keep dying. Like, it's very upsetting and frustrating. Like, because like, not just upsetting from the sense that you're like, oh, I died again. Like, also upsetting, like, because it's pretty gruesome. Like, a lot of the stuff is, like, scary horror stuff. And, like, I don't want to keep watching it. Like, I'm done. It was the kind of thing where, like, it didn't get less scary. I mean, certain parts definitely did after you had to play them 3 or 4 times. But, like, it would mostly stay unsettling enough, even, like, the 4th or 5th time trying to do a part, that, like, you're like, I just want to be done with this. Like, it's too upsetting. I don't want to keep watching this. So, like, being chased by Marta in particular in a lot of scenes was very stressful. And to the point where, like, it was, like, very not obvious that, like, there was a... Like, it was not obvious, like, how you were supposed to do certain sections. And I say that, like, because it's, like, this game, because there were so many more enemies to see you, I felt like I wanted more tools at my disposal, like a la, like, Metal Gear Solid or something, where at least I, like, had some idea, like, or Last of Us, where it's like I have some idea about what I, like, some survival techniques, which I understand they're not going for that, and I'm totally fine with it. Like, that's the way they want to play, they make the game. I'm on board with it. It's just that, like, don't expect me to, like, really get every piece of story out of your game, because I'm not going to, like, explore that. I'm just going to get through and get from point A to point B.
If there was anything that were in, like, people's homes in, like, a big village, it's like, no way. The only way I would find it is if I happen to, like, stop in it.
Right.
But otherwise, it's like not a thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, like, in general, the way that I would find things would be like, or go through things would be like different than like your average other person. Because there were times where I like literally did not know what way to go or what to do, and I probably happened upon it by luck, and it might not even been the way that was like meant to go. Right.
Yeah, it made it too stressful to like really explore, and probably I'd get to a end of an area and I'd look at my like the note area, and I'd be like, you know, they were kind of they were in order of where they were. So when you'd find a new one, rather than just like saying you've had another note, like it'd be like there'd be like empty spots and then the new one. So you're like, oh, so I just missed 3 things, like in between the last thing I found and this thing I found. So it made it like, and you also didn't know whether it was because the way they would work is like, you took a picture of every document rather than, like, picking it up and taking it. So, like, it could either have been a document or it could have been a moment where you had to focus on something with the camera. Like, that kind of note. So it's hard to tell.
I probably found, like, half of them, and I kind of tried.
Yeah, I definitely tried, obviously, but after a bit I was like, this is too scary. Like, I can't. Like, it's too scary. I can't find all this stuff.
And that's the thing. The entire game is, like... It's definitely one of the scariest games.
Yeah, it's just unsettling. Like, everything you're up against is, like...
There are very few moments...
upsetting.
There are very few moments where you're, like, in the clear.
Right, right.
And
Yeah, just from one thing to another. You're like, you get away from Marta, and you're like, oh, finally. And then you're like, oh, good, I got away from her so I could go into this mine shaft. And you're like, well, what's going to be down here? And then it's like, oh, all these heretics. And you're like, okay, great.
But what makes it even, you mentioned it earlier, like, sometimes you find these people that don't attack you, but then sometimes the same people in the same group will attack you.
Yes.
So you have to, like, get away. Like,
right. It makes
when you were at that
so...
leper colony,
Yep.
some of them would just stand there, but then one guy, I probably died 50 times of this, would just, like, come and get you. And you're like...
so which one is it?
You're like, dude, come on.
Exactly.
It was.
Yeah, made it very like. So I mean, good. Obviously, that's what they're going for. So it's fine. But like, I guess in my mind, it's like don't put more stuff in your game that's gonna make me feel crap. Like, cause I'm never gonna go back and like find this stuff. You know, like it's too scary. So like, I guess it's for like the really diehard horror fans that can put up with it. But, like, I wouldn't be able... I would have to play it so much that it would get not scary because it was so, like... I was so used to seeing it that I was completely desensitized to it. And then at that point, I don't care about the story because I've like, played it too much. So it's like there's no medium. There's no point where I'm, like, still scared by it, but am able to find everything. So it's like this weird... Like, who is collecting all of these documents? Like, the best thing the easiest thing I would do is just go online and just read them all. Like, I'm just gonna read them later and not deal with it. Because, like, why would I bother? Like, it's too scary. Like, so you did a good job. You made a game that was scary. But, like, you can't expect anybody to collect all this stuff because, like, it's too scary. Like,
it was very tough to get through, and
I had to take like
horror
breaks.
Games, yeah, horror games are like supposed to be tough to get through, but man, this one was tough.
Yeah,
there were so many times. I think I said it in the first one, but your battery runs out in your flashlight. Like when you use your camcorder, it never uses battery unless you use the light or the
night vision or
microphone.
Whatever.
On it.
Right. Oh, yeah. Which was the thing that, like, they introduced in this one, and I used it maybe once because I had to.
I used it
I kept forgetting.
The time.
I kept forgetting.
I used it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness, I used it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because, like, I ended up, like, not using it much at all. The only time I used it was there was a part in a flashback where it was dark, and you had to follow Jessica, and, like, you had to use the microphone because it was pitch black. So you couldn't see anything, and your night vision didn't even work. Like, it was just all dark. So you had to use it in order to figure out where she was.
And your battery runs out so fast. There were so many times where I would, like, die on purpose. So I would get when you restart, you have a full battery, the only one in your camera, and like I would get to points and I would have like no battery in my camera.
I wonder if it's because of
where I literally had to change TVs because apparently the TV I was playing on is not super bright. I had to change to another TV that's brighter. I had the brightness to max. And when I would be out, because there's like very little like actual light in the game, when I would be out like in the middle of nowhere without my camera on, I literally could not see where I was walking. Like it wasn't even just me being scared. It was like it's so dark.
Yeah, you do. So, that one TV you have is pretty dark, so it might just have been.
It might be just for me, but I did have to change TVs, and that's
crazy.
Pretty annoying.
But I will say that, like, that's interesting because I wonder if it is just the microphone because I didn't run out of batteries once. Like, there was never a time where I was worried about it. It was probably because I was
playing on a TV where maybe I had to use my.
You had to use it more than
often.
You. Right, that's probably what it was.
Because
because I'm usually pretty conservative about it. Like, I'm like, I'll only use it when I absolutely have to, you know, or I'll like flick it on for a second to see where I'm going and then immediately turn it back off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, I just could not see.
Yeah, that's crazy. But anyway.
But yeah, it was a very brutal. At least they give you a lot of checkpoints.
Yes.
Because there were times where you're like if there was a big place you were in, like a village, and you had to do two things. You had to go up to a place and then flip a switch and then get an item all in the same thing before getting the checkpoint.
And things were chasing you. It's like,
forget about it.
But there was a couple moments that were like especially frustrating. As you said, you died a bunch of times, but there was like two different moments where it was just like, are you kidding me right now? One of them was there was a part where Marta, you were in a village, and you basically just needed to push a cart up to a fence so you could jump over it.
That was pretty dang hard.
And like of course, to push the cart is like it moves at the slowest snail's pace you can imagine. And I think it might attract her. Like I think the sound of it might attract her. So like even if you would like lead her away to one side of the village, you had to make your way back to the cart, but you had to do it in a silent way because like she would hear you if you like ran back to the cart.
It was very, very difficult.
And I ended up
very difficult.
When I tried it so many times, and what ended up making me win that one was I realized that like I could at least take like 2 hits before I was dead. Because I would get to this thing where as soon as she would see me, I would be like, damn it, and then I'd let her kill me and I'd start it over.
Okay.
Right? And I would kind of keep doing it till I was like, and then finally I was like so frustrated that while I was pushing the cart, I just got to the cart and she comes busting through the wall. So it's like I haven't even started pushing the cart yet, and I'm like, screw it, whatever. I'm just gonna let her kill me while I'm pushing the cart. And I was pushing the cart and I got hit once, and it was like mostly red. Then I got hit again and it was very red. And then all of a sudden I could jump up on the cart and get up over the head. And it was like, oh my god. Like, so, which, that was kind of frustrating because it was like, so I had to like, know, like, because there's no HUD. So you don't know how much life you have left.
Well, there's also...
there is a healing thing, but it requires you to stop moving.
Yeah. So
you'll kill yourself if you're like in the middle of a fight. It's not like Resident Evil where you can just like open up the menu and eat a herb quick while you're in the middle of fighting. Like, so it's like you really can't heal yourself in the middle of craziness. But like you have no idea how much health you have left. You just basically know you only get a couple hits. And she's just like, oh, so it was very like, and there was another part like that where like basically I had to just keep going and just like hope that I make it, and then I would make it, and I'm like, okay, great, like that's the end. Like that was a little bit frustrating because there was like, it kind of took the strategy away from it. Like it was just like, I'm just seeing if it works. Like I have no way of like in a survival horror game, normally it's like, okay, I'm managing my items, like I know how much I have. You never have any idea how many batteries you have. You just keep picking them up and eventually you just don't have them, which I never ran into. But same thing with bandages. You have no idea how many bandages you have. You just at some point probably would hit the heal button and you just wouldn't have one. There's no way of knowing. So like it makes the strategy of a survival horror game like completely non-existent. Like you basically just have to like kind of hope for the best, which like I guess is, if that's the way you want to make the game, fine. But again, this all leads back to, don't expect me to be able to mine all the cool little flavor from your game.
Yeah. Because
I'm not going to play it. Like I'm not going to play it for an extended period of time. I'm just going to be like, I got through it, I did it, and then that's it. I'm never going to return to it.
Yeah.
Like if there's no, like Dark Souls is hard as hell, but at least you're like upgrading your stuff, and eventually you could be like so powerful that you could go back and be a little bit more like powerful and kind of, go and check out all the cool flavor and stuff.
With the way it's set up, you don't ever get any stronger at any point. It's just
right.
It gets tougher as it goes on.
Exactly. Like there's no like, which is fine. I mean, I get it. Like I get that. But like don't put so many documents in the game then, or something, because like I'm never gonna find them all.
That being said, that is my only major criticism is the difficulty, because it's much more like well-rounded, and with the flashbacks it splits it up enough that like it doesn't feel like old or annoying, like not annoying because of difficulty, but it's like very fresh, different stuff you do throughout the game.
Yeah, the flashbacks really help with that.
I did enjoy the gameplay. It was just so dang hard. And again, with horror games, you're not supposed to be necessarily having fun.
I agree.
It just is what it is. But it was like, once you got past the part, you felt good, and that's how it's supposed to go.
Absolutely.
So
I'm on board with it in that regard. My only gripe is just that idea that like I did feel a little bit unsatisfied that I couldn't like get all the cool flavor that I'm sure they spent time writing, just because I was like, I'm done. I gotta be done. So I had to like look that stuff up later online, because I'm just like, I'm not going back and trying to find some hidden whatever. It's just not happening.
So in general, the way I look at this, it's a lot of small. It's the same base gameplay as 1, but it's a lot of small changes that makes it
a lot of polish.
A lot of polish that makes it much much better. So gameplay wise, I'm putting this pretty high. I'm looking at an 8.5, 8.5 on that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with 7 on gameplay, just because again it was a little bit too difficult at times, but like I thought some of the difficulty was down to like just like what you're capable of doing, or what, I don't know, like it just was like difficult, but not like, sometimes it didn't seem like it was like certain difficulty parts were like intentional. It just like worked out that way, and then it was like, I'm just gonna try to figure this out,
I did trial and error.
Yeah, no sometimes when I would get to an end, like a safe part, quote unquote, I was like relieved, but I wasn't like satisfied that I did the thing right. I just like happened to get through it, and then I'd be like, okay, good, I have a breather. But like I wasn't like, oh man, I finally figured out the best way to do it. I just kind of like figured out a way to do it. It wasn't like, when you play Portal or something and you're like, oh, I did it and I know how I did it. It was just kind of like very happenstance. You're like, oh, I guess I did it. Okay, great.
So the last 4 parts, as always, we're going to blow through them real quick. We have graphics up next. It looks really good.
Yes.
It looks really good.
Yeah,
it does. And
really
especially
well
because it's Outlast 1 definitely was a budget title. Like, it was very clear. Outlast 2, like how they look when they talk, and like it's tougher because it's outside and there's so much more to show, like the grass and how everything moves and whatever.
Yeah, you're not in like as many confined spaces as you are in the first one.
Very little like frame rate issues. It just looks very polished. I always will love.
There was a lot of water stuff in this, and it all looked good. Yeah. You had to go underwater a lot in order to like escape from people's like prying eyes and stuff, and it was very satisfying. Like you were underwater and you could see everything was really wavy and creepy. It made it extra scary, but very well done in that regard.
Yeah, just in general, it looks really good. And like especially gets the aesthetic since atmosphere is part of the graphics. I mean, the atmosphere is just great. Especially the old Catholic school, and just how they take something that like you early in the game like love when you do the Catholic school parts, because like you are like, you're not going to get hurt.
You knew you were safe.
But then the atmosphere gets set up where like you hate the Catholic school parts the most, because it's like at the end, because the enemies and whatever. So they did a really good job, and clearly like whatever like extra budget they got, they like did well. No like no, that's sound. Never mind. Just in general, it looks just really good.
Yeah,
I think I'm looking also another 8.5 on this one.
Yeah, I would go 8.5. Yeah, or I'll go 8 on the graphics. But yeah, it really, and the design was cool too. Like because there's these like kind of bosses, quote unquote, like the heads of these factions, like Noth. Yeah, you don't really fight Noth, but like Marta, you get chased by like that. Master Blaster kind of deal with the dude on top of the other guy's back, and they were really well done, like very creepy and like scary. Oh geez, so it was good. I like that a lot, but yeah, definitely.
Sound is another part where the game does really well.
Yep.
There's no voices that are. I don't think there's a couple voices, and we'll get into it, that are so good that they're like very enjoyable. But there's no voices that are so bad that it takes you out of it.
Yeah.
Like the guy you play as is like okay, for the most part he's like gotta find it.
Yeah, right,
and
exactly.
That's it.
And I like that he did the notes instead of having them written. That lent it that because he was a character who talked in cutscenes, so it was cool to have him keep talking throughout everything. So I like that.
Did the protagonist talk in the first one? I kind of forget.
No,
he didn't. Okay, yeah, this one he does, quite a bit. He sees something scary, instead of just writing down some edgy thing, he it feels right with it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously, a little bit one note where he's just always exasperated.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of him losing his mind towards the end, which I think they, tried their best to make it, feel kind of real, but definitely Noth is super creepy.
Noth was the best for me, because it was done. You've seen how it's done before. It's come children, big old guy just being you have sinned against the faction,
whatever. Oh my God, just, very well done.
I will always enjoy the voices like that.
Yeah.
So,
and I really liked the weird head of the heretics or whatever, that weird beautiful / horrible looking woman. She was very creepy. She was more I don't know. She was similar to Noth, but not quite. Her attitude or her personality was different, and it was extra creepy. But yeah, I like that a lot. I thought the voice acting on those was pretty good.
And just like the first game, they put a lot of small little nice touches, you're outside, so you hear a lot of the vegetation, and
for sure,
sometimes not necessarily the villagers talk to each other, but you'll hear things going on, and the lepers, you'll hear them being whatever,
throwing up or whatever.
Yeah, just
very atmospheric,
very atmospheric. So yeah, overall with sound, probably looking at a 7.5. This was a really good one.
Yeah, I go with 7 on that. That was good because, but again, it's the atmosphere was good, well done, but it's also again this just makes it. I can't play this game for an extended period of time.
Yeah,
because it's too scary.
Even me, I played a lot of horror games, and it's just very
too much.
Well, let's go into that next. We got fun factor, which again, fun factor. If we don't take this literally,
yes, not in a horror game.
Yeah, because it's just not meant to be that way. It
right.
would be
I mean, when you go to a horror movie, you're not going to have fun. You're going to get scared. You know what you're getting into.
So I would call this, instead of fun factor, maybe like enjoyment of experience.
Right. Exactly.
And it was enjoying. It was frustrating.
Yes.
And it took it a little too far, which I'll dock it a little bit. But in general, with a horror game, when you do it, you're supposed to feel good about the fact that you did it, and they do a really good job with that.
Yes. Absolutely.
And just in general, I kept playing it and kept enjoying coming home and turning on and whatever, even though I knew it was going to be very scary and all that. So. In general, the simple fact that it made me want to continue this, whereas Outlast 1, again, it wasn't necessarily a fun game. It's not supposed to be. It was just so frustrating and so groan worthy, and you just don't want to continue. This one I wanted to continue, and again, when it was done, I was man. And we'll go into that part at the for the very last one, replayability. But just in general, I had an enjoyment of experience. I think back on it, and it's very good overall experience that I won't forget gameplay wise, in game wise. So I think I'm looking at a 7.5 for that one. Very good stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a 6.5. Well, no, I'll go up to 7. I did enjoy it, but it was the kind of thing where I definitely needed to be in the mood for it. So I would get home from work or whatever, and I would say do I really want to get super scared? And sometimes I'd be no, and I would just play something else, or I'd watch something else that was funny or happy or whatever. But so and it was definitely scary, but it was also depressing parts were the whole flashback thing was pretty upsetting. So not just scary, not just if it was just the not just the not flashback part, Noth and them, that would have been scary, but not depressing. I mean, it's a little bit, but the flashback was really oppressively depressing.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word of it. It's brutal in that it's brutal that you see all this carnage, but it's also brutal in that it really has a lot of like, do I really have to see this? Like,
Yeah, right.
do I really have to play this part where like this girl is being taken by this priest? And you're just like, dude, come on. And you're like, you want to do something, but it's like that. It's a game,
and like it's not gonna let you just attack the priest or whatever. Like you're just like, this sucks, and you have to control your character through it, and you're like, okay. Yeah. So it makes you like kind of live through that experience, and it's like a little bit, so it was definitely the kind of thing where it was like I had to wait to be in the mood. So if I would get past a particularly stressful part and take a break, it would end up being like days, versus like, like, oh, I'll play this tomorrow. Like it would be like the next day I'd be like, and I'd have to wait a few days, and I'd be like, okay, I'll.
Yeah, and that's just the thing with horror games. You gotta be in the mood for them. It just is what it is. Yeah. So last up, replayability. Now. Right. The first one, I gave a 1, and Parker gave a 0 for replayability of Outlast 1 because it would physically cause us pain to play that game again.
Right.
Even though you think of like, oh, well, there was this cool moment 1 minute in, and then you're like, no. Right. This one, like, again, a 10 is like, oh, well, I started it right away, and I continued to play for a while, and a 0, again, is like, oh, my God. I'm sitting at a 5 because it was a very oppressive, depressive, and whatever game, but, like, I would, in the future, play it again. I'm not like jonesing for it, but I'm not at the same time being like, oh god, I'd never do that. Like never ever kind of thing. Right. So I would play it again. I'm like very mixed on it, probably because it's a horror game, so I'm sitting just completely average at a 5 on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I can see like if again like the kind of the metric with this we were talking about was like if it's not something that you were like immediately pick back up. Sometimes you're like, okay, what about if somebody wanted to, like, play it through? Would you, like, play it through with somebody, like a friend or something? And, like, I don't really know that I would. Like, it just was that scary. Like, not from a perspective of it being bad, like the way Outlast 1 I would never play again. It was just too, like, I know it's what it is now, and I know the story. So, like, the curiosity of getting to the end of the story is not there anymore. So it's like, why would I subject myself to this fear and terror if I don't even have, like, if I'm not even discovering anything new?
Right.
Like, if I was discovering new stuff, I would get it, but, like, yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, I'll put it at, like, a 3, I guess, because, like, maybe there's like, I could be convinced of it at some point, but it's very doubtful. Like, it was just too scary. Like, for me.
And to give it props before we end up here, that's kind of what you want from a horror game, especially a horror game like this, which is not very conventional, like Resident Evil. Oh well, supplies are limited, but whatever. It's like no, there are no supplies. There is no fighting. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, no, it's very whatever.
If you would want to go and straight back play one of these games right away, I would be like, really?
I would not understand.
That would be kind of something. So again, it's almost a props to the game where it's like. I'm very uncomfortable with playing the game again,
Right.
But I enjoyed it. I'm very uncomfortable with playing it, but I enjoyed it enough that I would like, down the, a time of year where there's not a lot of games coming out, and I'm like, well, I want to boot up the PS4. Maybe I wouldn't even go through the whole thing again, but play it a bit and be like, hey,
Right.
Maybe until I get, frustrated again. So,
yeah.
When we look at the scores overall, the average, I got to a 7.33, and this was just meant to be. Parker's score ended up being 6.66. The number of the beast. So, I mean, that's meant to be.
That is meant to be in a horror game. Absolutely.
It's just meant to be. Just so, like I said, despite not having the accolades in general that people have from the first one, again, the first one was kind of a unique, not even a unique mainstream game of the genre. So, that happens. When, like, something comes out, like, the first, I don't know, it happens for everything. Like, the first big thing that catches on fire,
Right.
Call of Duty wasn't the first online shooter. Come on. But Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, was, like, the first big one, and because of that, you gotta give it, props for that. Like, was it absolutely not. Was it the first? No way,
Right.
Battlefield was around for forever,
Yep.
but it's like, that was the one that did it. And because of that, it wasn't Outlast 1 wasn't the first game of that genre, but it was the first to like really bring it to the mainstream because like besides very hardcore horror or PC people, I've never heard someone say penumbra. You know,
yeah,
I've heard Amnesia. I've heard Amnesia, but that was like less than Outlast. Outlast really like blew it.
Outlast, yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right. So, like I said, Amnesia again. It was mostly people I knew who were like, "Yeah, I do Steam a lot," you know.
Right.
Whereas like a very casual person would be like, "I have one game on. I signed up for Steam so I could get Outlast." You know.
Exactly.
So again, it's the second game in the series, so it doesn't have the whatever the accolades of it, but like clearly it's a better game. Like if you're listening to this, like I would really love to hear it, and you're listening to this and you're like, no, dude, Outlast 1 is definitely better. I played both. Please explain. I mean, I don't want to lambast you.
Absolutely.
I want to hear why, because...
I mean, I do.
Because I love,
you're nicer than me. I'm like flabbergasted that it is somehow rated better than the second one. Like, that's crazy to me.
That's just one of those things where, like, again, people's first love takes some time to get over.
I guess. I just don't... Like, in my mind, I'm like, how does the second one get made when the first one is a budget title and is as bad as Outlast 1 was? Like, why would they remake that game? Like, why would they make a sequel? Like, it's, you know...
From all the sales
people,
they made
people loved it, so it's like, okay, maybe I'm just out of touch, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, it happens all the time where, like, you'll hear, like, oh, the second one's always not as good. It's like, well, maybe because, like, you set your, expectations too high.
Yeah.
And the good news is, because we disliked one so much, it was like...
the opposite.
Expectations were so low where, like, even 1 second in, where the first scene you're in the airplane and, like, you saw, like, the presentation, you were like, cool.
Okay.
You were like, wow,
you're like,
all right, this is something. You know?
Absolutely.
So, next up, I believe, maybe not the next one exactly, but coming up we have planned a talk, just a general talk, not necessarily a game review, about horror games in general.
Yeah, because, I mean, the Outlast is definitely the beginning of, we're going to be playing a couple other horror games that we'll be reviewing, so we figured, why not do a podcast just about horror genre, survival horror / just, scary games.
And as I said before, that's one of those that, like, I've just always kind of done. Despite not really liking horror movies, I've always been into the games. And, we've talked about it briefly before, but I really want to go into, like, what I mean by, like, horror games shouldn't have good control, and they shouldn't be fun. It sounds like such a silly thing, but if you really think about it, like, it kind of starts to make sense. And we're going to talk just very briefly about, like, a lot of the staples, like, what makes Resident Evil so good? Where did it fall off?
Yep.
What's the scariest game? Just all that kind of different stuff. So,
and conversely, I really like horror movies. I mean, I like movies in general, and I love horror movies. But I play because I do like to. I guess not like is the wrong word, but I have a hard time getting through a lot of horror games, even though I force myself to get through them because I want to be able to, like, know what the story is and talk about it with other people that played them. I find it much harder to get through a horror game than to get through a horror movie. Like, horror movies don't affect me nearly as much as horror games, and I don't know why, but we'll delve into it a bit.
Person playing it, but we'll talk about that next time. So listen, thank you out there in YouTube land for listening, and we'll be back to you next time for more horror action.